recently taken I do use Henry. So it's a different, I'm definitely in a transition phase. I feel very much that I am a third gender. Yeah, I'm from Norway, way up north, above the Arctic Circle, in the very, almost the most northern point. My mom is from the most northern point there civilized in the world, Hammerfest. I'm from Andøya, small island out in the Nordic Sea. 3,000 people in my hometown. The entire island when I grew up was 7,000. Now there's down to 5,000. Really strong wind, major waves. Like we lived like a mile away from the ocean, but ocean spray would be on the windows because it would carry with the wind. And dark, dark during the night, wintertime, 3 months, and summer with complete sunshine 24 hours. So I think it really, the environment you grow up in has, to me, a huge impact on who I became. Like I became that. I'm stoic, hard, yet totally like in tune to nature. Been suicidal when I was in Norway when I was a kid. When I was 5, 8, 13, all times when I had clear attempts for suicides because I couldn't fit in, and it was so much of a struggle for me to just not be who I was, but wanting to be that. I remember this one time I had put my clothes aside after swim practice, and I'd put it in the laundry room. And I remember having this like moment where I was saying to myself, I wonder if that would be possible. Well, anything is possible, Renatus. I guess it could be possible. And what I was dabbling with is, could it be possible that I am a boy? So optimistic about it. I don't know why. I kind of like, it came, I had the conclusion, and I just moved on. But that was rare. More often than not, it was this place of like being very, trying, working really hard at just fitting in, and then having this breakdown cycle, and then wanting to die. Yeah, so like my junior year of college, hardest year ever. So I know I like women. I've been in relationships with women since high school. Actually, I started grinding with girls like when I was 12, but I knew I was gay, or that I liked women at least. And I knew something wasn't right about my body, the place I was occupying in my body. And I'd gone to therapy, I'd tried to solve this, I'd overcome my eating disorder. Like, there was a lot of things that had been worked on, but yet I couldn't grapple with the concept of like, this is life, this is it. So I decided I was gonna hang myself. And we have a lot of suicides, successful suicides running in my family. So I know how to do it. so I had the rope, I had found the beams, how I was going to do this, I'd written my letters. I had done the pills, at least started to, and I was drinking and doing it. And I just remember being in the middle of this letter to my therapist, and I was so exhausted. And I just said to myself, well, I'm just going to sleep a little bit. Then I'll do it. But you know, magically, I woke up the next day, and that next day, I ran from these condominiums I was staying in at the school, across the fields. This is in Ohio. It was August 7th, 1996. 96? Yeah. That's not that long ago. It's my junior year. I woke up and I ran across these fields. I knew where I was going. In the rain, full force. I just couldn't get there fast enough. And I ran into this hotel. And a friend of mine from the swim team had told me about this woman from my freshman year. She had said, my friend, she had said, Renata, I know somebody who's like you. You know? Why don't you go and talk with her? And I was so offended with her. I was like, what do you mean, like me? She's a lesbian, Renata. And I was like, I'm not a lesbian. I'm bisexual. Don't you know? You know? But anyway, so that day, I ran to see this woman, Clara Garland. I'm 20, 21. She's like 10, 12 years older than me. And she'd never seen me. And she was working the front desk. And I just said, I'm crying. I said to her, you don't know me, but I'm a friend of yours. Can I please talk with you? And graceful as she is, I mean, look at me once and you know I'm gay. You know, it's like, so she probably knew what was coming, where she's like, okay, let's go out near the water fountain. And so I had my breakdown. I said to her, I'm gay, and I know my dad is going to kill me. And I had such a strong relationship to my dad. And my sister I had many years of like confronting this with other people. Like my freshman year, I'd said to my sister, I'm gay, you know that, I'm with a woman. And she had said, in turn, my really feminine my really feminine sister, she goes, you can never tell our dad. It will break up the marriage. He'll kill you. Right? So, so that was just adding to all this baggage. And so anyway, so I cried to this woman, and I'm like, my dad's going to kill me. And she said in return, you know, it's okay. You can have your own family if that happens. You know, don't worry about it. So anyway, that was the beginning of my coming out experience. And it really worked. Like, coming out really helped me in, like, being not so depressed and dark and cynical and isolated. I do think my dad was a huge role model. It's funny because I don't look at him right now as being a man that I aspire to be. But when I was a child, he was very important to me. He was so solid. He was a quiet man, strong, productive. He did like 100 different things. He was like a jack of all trades. And he was a blue-collar man. Like, he had nothing. He didn't go to high school. He just finished his high school diploma. You know, but he made a life for himself, and I really admired him for a long time. I mean, I still do, but it's in a different capacity. And yeah, and I think other girls relate to their mom. You know, I think that I was isolated for so long, and all of my transgender persona and being has come from within. It hasn't been, I saw a person, this is who I want to be, or I relate to that person or that culture, that's who I am. Like, I've had my surgeries and never had a transgender community to relate to it. But my dad was very much an enforcer or a supporter in like bringing out my balanced gender. And yeah, you know, I mean, my mom had like one cabinet on one side of the vanity and my dad had on the other. And in my dad's cabinet, it was a shaving blade, it's this foam and you know, this little brush, a little wooden handle. I think my mom gave it to him for Christmas. But he would like be very careful in how he was applying his foam before he would shave on his neck and all the way up. And I'd watch him. I was very infatuated with this process. And when they would go away, like they would go on, you know, just for tea parties or like coffee or like walk, whatever, I'd get in there and I would be the person who would put on my foam and shave. And like I wouldn't put the razor blade onto my skin, but I would pretend. And I just loved the you know, putting water in the vanity and having all the foam there and just the smell of it all was a very tactile experience for me. And I've, in hindsight, realized that that's just not a normal thing that a girl aspires to. There's other things that I think that has, in my childhood, that really brought out that I think that there's something that happened during my birth or before my birth, during like neural tube development. I mean, people have different opinions about these things, but I do think that, you know, I'm very close to being intersexed. I just didn't have the expressed genitalia to say, oh, this is an intersex person. But I do think that that's ultimately who I am. I remember too, like having really strong, like, opposition to anything girly. And my mom was insisting that I played with dolls. I remember, because I didn't have any friends, and my mom insisted on me going out to play with kids, when I was 8, 9, I would go and play with this girl who was 4, 5, because that was the closest I could get to a friend. Like, because she wasn't focused on that, and her parents were okay with me. And so we would play with Barbies, but I was always Ken. And I remember always wanting to, like, do her. Like, it was very sexual to me. Like, I'm gonna be Ken, I'm your boyfriend, and I lived it out through Ken. But by and large, it was all about just, like, being loud and boisterous and very tomboyish, but beyond that. My parents were so unhappy with my masculine presentation. I was, you know, the way I walked, the way I talked, I had very deep voice. And my mom was teaching me how to soften my voice and come up with a pitch. And then they decided, you know what, you need to be in gymnastics, because this was going to teach me how to have more feminine posture. My sister was very good gymnast. And, but I was the tragedy. I was on the mat tumbling and I would roll off the mat and do cartwheels and I had like no grace, none. And I remember there's this time where the teacher, and they were all like high school, college students who were the coaches, directed me that when all the other kids were doing like graceful exercises, Renata, he said, why don't you go over in that corner? We're going to finish up the last 30 minutes doing this and that. Since you're not doing that, I want you to do 200 push-ups. And I loved it. You know, a normal kid would like have traumatic experiences around this and be like, you know, I was, you know, separated from the herd. I was like, wow, this is cool. And I got to do these push-ups and they had finished up while I was still doing push-ups. And they all came around and they were in awe because I finished 200 push-ups. Hey, all right. But wherever I went, there I was with my miserable self of like, wow, I'm hiding who I am. I'm so ashamed of being trans that I don't even talk to people about being trans. I just felt like I was much more in tune. It's hard to explain just that feeling. It's the same as when I had my chest surgery. Like when your t-shirt just hangs straight down the way you want it to be. Like just, it's something that's inside of you that you don't even see. Like that it was gone was to me this huge relief. So long, even from in Norway, coming to the US, thinking that this was going to be a place where I could be myself, and somewhat having found that by coming out as a lesbian. The idea of changing my body beyond what I had already done to it, training hard and doing everything I could to physically change it through exercise and nutrition and anorexia. That didn't come up for me till my senior year in college, and there was somebody on campus who was trans, and I didn't know if she had had surgery or anything, but it was the first time I was introduced to the concept of a trans body, and I really liked this person in the sense of their strength and courage that they had. That was Ami. So the only trans person who was on campus and had identified as a male, lived in the male dormitory. And so I was open to that idea. I didn't think I fit that necessarily. Then I came out to California that following year. I just went straight from undergrad into graduate school. And right away I knew that I don't know if it was I was ready or I saw all these alternatives in San Francisco. It wasn't like the transgender movement had really taken off by then. It was in the mid-90s. But I started identifying as butch, and that was the beginning. So that was about 2 years later that I already had, at that point, I decided I wanted to have surgery. And it takes a long time from the moment you're diagnosed with being gender dysphoric and having to go through therapy for a year to actually being permitted to have the surgery. So I had my surgery in September of 2000. gone to therapy for a full year before that, and I never had any really big doubts that this was the right thing for me. I never liked my breasts. I had a lot of my friends, lesbians, who were really upset. Actually, they had a really personal feeling around my breasts, and they were not sexual partners of mine. They were friends, and they verbally expressed their disapproval of me having them cut off. And they all kept saying, well, you have such beautiful breasts, you shouldn't ruin them. I do remember going into the surgery. It was the operation, the same day, inpatient. And my doctor is a renowned F2M surgeon in San Francisco. And I had a friend of mine who came with me just to wait in the waiting room. Before the anesthesiologist came in to do the injection, he just kind of stormed in nonchalantly. And I remember he just pulled out one of the markers that I had been using in chiropractic school to outline where on the spine, you know, are the different vertebrae. And he just took it out and he said, take off your shirt. And I was in a gown, and he just was as if he was pretending to be an artist. He was just slopping on the markers around my breast and like, I think we should do this and that. And I guess a lot of people have meetings with their surgeon leading up to this. I only met with him once beforehand. So I never discussed with him this concept that, you know, he was going to cut both my breast tissue off, but also my nipple and reconstruct my nipple. So here he starts. I'm supposed to go under 30 minutes, and he starts marking my nipple. And I said, what you doing? You know, I don't want my nipples changed. And he said, that's necessary. This is what I do. I'm going to cut everything down to, and he kept talking about some kind of, you know, a 5-dime nickel, or in different countries, there are different sizes, and he uses some Middle Eastern nickel or whatever, and that's what he measures his nipples towards. And anyway, I just remember in the moment being like, this isn't right. I don't want my nipples changed. But it all happened so quickly, and my friend left, and next thing I know, I woke up. So I've been talking with my friends, lovers, partners, that I was never going to do T. I thought that for me, that would be the last step I would do. Both knowing as much as I know about the body, and not, you know, just throwing hormones onto it to try and change my physical self. I just have a lot of opinions about the order of how things were to happen for me. And for me, the right thing was to not do testosterone for the longest time, and I thought I would never do it. But as I've done the chest surgery and the uterus and the ovaries, when it was all said and done, I felt closer than ever to thinking, you know what, I probably will move towards testosterone and moving further on this, I don't know if it's a linear or whatever you want to call it, the scale of female to male. But I was seriously considering it even back then in February of 2008. February, I was pretty sure that I would do just low-level T, just for a little bit, just to get a deeper voice. And my girlfriend at the time was very upset about this. She didn't think that it was ethically correct of me to use testosterone to deepen my voice. It needed to be more internal. So I went back and forth about this for quite a while. And in the end, of course, you have to do what's right for you. So I decided in June that I was probably going to do testosterone. It was just a matter of when. And it just happened really quickly from there on. in October. So I sat with the decision that I know I'm going to do it. It's just a matter of when. And I just woke up one day, and I guess the time was right for me. And I've been starting doing it for now. It's my 4th month, and I've gone from 25 up to 100 units. It's really actually incredible because I have people in my world who have taken tea at a much higher level. But fortunately, because the way I did it, with first taking out my breasts, then waiting many, many years, and then having my total hysterectomy, my body is very responsive to the tea, so I don't need a lot, and I'm getting what I think is awesome results. And in my 4th month, I'm already changing, like my physical density of my body has changed a lot. My voice has changed, I think at least. My facial structure has changed, like I feel like thicker. It's downfall or whatever you want to call it, like my clit's getting huge. And sometimes it hurts. I ride my bike a lot, so I never needed to wear paddings before riding. I thought it was the most ridiculous thing. But, you know, I think it's going to keep growing. I mean, that's the reality. So, and I don't really have a timeline for when I will stop, besides I think my body will tell me when I've gotten to that point where I'm just comfortable. But I'm not really looking to transition to pass as male in every which circumstance. But I think when my body feels like it's gotten to where it needs to be, and I just think the hormones has an enormous effect on my mind. It's just I've changed my emotional status, and I just talked to my physician today about it. It's like he says, well, it's not the tea that's doing it, it's that you're coming into yourself that's making you much more at ease with yourself. And I think that's probably very true, but it's just incredible.